walking bass lines in rock and roll? Absolutely! Here are some great Beatles songs with some killer walking bass lines as played by Paul McCartney. Check this out. Hi, I'm John Liebman. Welcome to another edition of The Essence of Groove. You know, the walking bass line, it's so much fun to play and it feels so good, and it is generally associated with jazz, because there's a ton of it in jazz. But you'll also find some really good walking bass lines in some styles other than jazz, like, for example, rock and roll. Let's take a look at 4 really great Beatles songs with some amazing walking bass lines as played by Paul McCartney. First one, All My Lovin'. By the way, I'm not going to sing these any more than I have to, but just enough to give you the idea. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you too. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day and I'll say, okay, first of all, let's take a look at some of what he's doing there. He's following a very simple, very common chord progression. He's starting actually on the 2 chord. He's doing a 2-5-1 in the key of E. So the key of E, the 2 chord would be an F sharp minor, and then the 5 chord is B7. And the 1 chord, of course, is E. So he could have gone, close your eyes and I'll kiss you, boom, 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 etc. And that would have been okay, maybe even fine. But a walking bass line is a way of getting us from here to there with some other notes in between. And there's more to it than that. It's a feel, it's a pulse, it's a vibe. It just feels good. And in pretty much every case, I think it swings. It's the shuffle feel. So, etc. But he's playing it, you know, it's a walking bass line. It sounds kind of jazzy, but I was thinking about this. That was, it seems to me, the very first song the Beatles played on that highly, highly anticipated appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show back in 1964. Did Ed Sullivan introduce them by saying, and here's a jazz band from England? I don't think so. It's rock and roll. It's the Beatles. It's walking bass. It's McCartney, and it's awesome. Let's take a look at another one. This is also from the early years of the Beatles. Remember the song Tell Me Why? This is in D. Tell me why you cry and why you lie to me. Okay, a walking bass line. Tell me why. A 1-6-2-5 chord progression, very common in all kinds of music, jazz, rock and roll, everything else. The 1 chord, D, to the 6 chord, to the 2 chord, E minor, to the 5 chord, A7. You've heard that pattern a million times. Well, look at all the things you can do with it, all the ways you can play it, including walking bass. Now there's another song, I know you know this one. This is also in the key of D, 8 Days a Week. Now this one has kind of an interesting twist in the chord progression. Ooh, I need your love, babe. Guess you know it's true. The thing that's a little different about this, in the key of D, he goes from the 1 chord, D, to the 2 chord, E. Now, normally in the key of D, the 2 chord would be an E minor chord. But he's playing an E major chord with a G sharp instead of a G natural. So, ooh, I need your love. And then we go to the 4 chord, and then back to the 1. One thing I can say, and you know the rest. Now, one interesting thing also about this, in going from the 4 chord, G, to the 1 chord, D, seems to me, I learned in music school 1,000 years ago, going from the 4 chord to the 1 chord, that's called a plagal cadence, P-L-A-G-A-L, more commonly known as the Amen cadence. And they call it that because it sounded like the end of a prayer in a church service, going from 4 to 1, so the 4 chord, G, and then to the 1 chord, Amen. So that's the Amen cadence. A little bit of music trivia for you. Let's do one more. This is a sort of an abbreviated section where there's a walking bass passage, A Day in the Life. John is singing, I read the news today, or excuse me, the news today, and oh boy, then things build up, and get to the other part, and Paul is going, woke up, fell out of bed, Now right there, he's pretty much holding on the 1 chord at first. It's just an E chord. Then he goes to the D. And then he alternates between the 1 chord E and the 5 chord B7. And then So yeah, it's kind of a brief interlude in there amongst everything else, but it's a walking bass line. It's the Beatles, it's rock and roll, it's not jazz, it's Paul McCartney. Those are just 4 examples. I'm sure we can find hundreds if we just thought about how long of a list we can come up with, not just Beatles tunes, but other non-jazz tunes, other rock and roll tunes with, how about Moon Dance, Van Morrison, how's that? See what you can come up with, fool around with these, start playing them, and I really want you to share your experience with me. Leave a comment below, let me know how you make out. I'd love to hear from you. I've got all kinds of tips and advice for learning bass, so be sure to subscribe to this channel. And I will see you back here next week, same time, same place, for another edition of The Essence of Groove. I'm John Liebman. Let's play bass.